Hey, Zanji on Software. My last podcast episode was about command sourcing, and I have received really interesting feedback, so thanks to you all. One comment which just appeared on Spreaker website was from Jan Dudulski. Thanks, Jan. And Jan asked, with command sourcing, don't you just move the problem of versioning from events to commands? Command structure could change in the future too. Jan, you're totally right. I think it is moving a problem a little bit. However, I think, but let me just disclaim, I'm still not really an expert in command sourcing, so bear with me. I just want to share my progress of learning here, so I just share what I think so far. We haven't really applied it in production yet. But what I think is that this move of the problem is still very useful. In my experience, events, they kind of need to change more often than the commands. And because with events, they're kind of like victims sometimes of our architectural changes. So the internal implementation details of the system. While commands, this is a little bit different. I believe they happen to change, but they happen to change rarely as compared to events. Here is also an important and interesting discussion of what is exactly a command from the perspective of the whole system. So from the perspective of the whole system, the command is that, whatever the UI happens to intend. So the UI is the client. It kind of reflects the user, but it's actually the UI. So it might be the JavaScript application, it might be some kind of HTML application where you submit a huge form. And this is also interesting because I've seen systems which were really task-oriented UI. So each kind of action on the UI were propagated as JavaScript through Ajax to the backend, and then on the backend you've had small commands. So they're kind of like matched or mapped one-to-one to the domain from the application layer. So the UI, for example, to the domain, there was like almost one-to-one mapping. But sometimes you see those applications, like typically with the Rails way or the CRUD way, where there's a huge form being submitted, and then that form is fully sent to the backend, and actually the form represents a big number of smaller changes. And sometimes we split those into smaller commands. Sometimes it's just one big command being like applied to the domain. I think it's an anti-pattern, but it is happening. So because I'm talking about this distinction here, because if your UI kind of happens to change, then you have the problem with commands versioning too, or you can rewrite your commands. And I think there is also another difference here, that in event sourcing or in events, you often say that we don't want to change the history. Event is a fact from the past. So we are very reluctant to change the history. Although, just a small remark here, in Rails Event Store we are just introducing some mechanisms to make it easier to change events, obviously for people who know what they do. With commands, they are not representing the fact. Maybe they're representing the fact of an intent, but it's not really a fact of what happened. So I think we can be more liberal here. We can be more liberal about migrating them or changing their structures, splitting them, and so on. So I think it's a little bit easier. But that's just my thoughts for now. Once again, thanks for the comment. And by the way, there was also feedback regarding ResCon, and people are asking for the detailed agenda of the workshop and also for the conference. So the workshop will be about Rails, DDD, event sourcing, and CQRS. We usually have this kind of workshop happening for 2 days. This time we want to compress it and happen in 1 day. So there will be, as compared to the 2 days version, there will be shorter tasks to do, shorter exercises. But program-wise, we want to cover all the important topics. Obviously, it will be very demanding, but we do want to cover the most important building blocks from domain-driven design, the event sourcing, and the CQRS. So they all will be there. However, it might be a good idea to attend both the workshop and the conference because they will complement each other. However, still, only the workshop alone will be fine to grasp, what's it all about. and be able to at least start experimenting with those concepts in your Ruby applications. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.